Hello, it's great to be with you at the Arizona Broadband Stakeholders Network meeting. I wish that I could be physically with you. I'm actually out pretty close to you right now. I am with my family on spring break just south of you in Cabo. But I wanted to join you today to celebrate the work that you're doing and to recognize its importance. You know, broadband is the most powerful platform in the history of the planet. But its real secret will become when it becomes a pervasive platform. And that's the work that you all are doing in Arizona. And that's why your work is so important. You know, Arizona is a classic example of both the opportunities and the challenges represented by broadband build-out. I mean, obviously, the impact on business, both established business and new business, the impact on community safety, the impact on international trade and your relations with your neighbors south of the border, the opportunities for healthcare, and of course my favorite, the significant impact that broadband has in changing the educational paradigm for the students of our nation. And I recognize how fulfilling this kind of promise is very challenging in Arizona. I mean, I've seen the vast stretches of Arizona. I've been to Show Low. I've been to the White River Reservation. I've been to Jerome. I was married in Prescott. And so I have spent a lot of time looking at the vast landscape of your great state and recognizing the challenge that that represents for you. But the Arizona Broadband Shareholders Network is banding together to address those problems so that the whole can be greater than the sum of the parts. You know, I have just finished a new book, or a new book's just come out more appropriately, called From Gutenberg to Google, The History of Our Future. And the basic concept of From Gutenberg to Google is that we are as we connect. How we use networks defines who we are, both as a society and as an economy. And what you're building is the third great network revolution. The first revolution I talk about in From Gutenberg to Google is Johannes Gutenberg and the printing press and how it was the original information revolution because it unlocked the way that information had been hoarded to keep people in line, basically. And it produced great upheaval, the Renaissance, the Reformation, great challenges. But it started us under the world that we know today. Second great network revolution was the 1-2 punch in the middle of the 19th century of the railroad, the death of distance, and the telegraph, which was the end of time, the first electronic network. Those two together created the Industrial Revolution, which again redefined us. And now, broadband coupled with Moore's Law, the effects of Moore's Law and low-cost computing, brings us right to the verge of the third great network revolution. And I think that what you're going to be enabling to trigger that third great revolution is four specific things that will move us from being on the cusp of a transformational moment to actually being amidst a transformational moment. First is the changing nature of the networks. As you build your networks, you know that you're not just building a transport network anymore, that the intelligence in the network means that the network no longer is about just transportation, but about orchestration, and about orchestrating the data to do things in the network that used to have to be done at either end of the network. So that's the big change that you are going to be enabling, the first big change. Second, of course, is artificial intelligence. What is AI other than the connection to various troves of data for the fast recovery and plugging into algorithms that make pretty good predictions? So again, for AI, we've got to have broadband, high-speed, low-latency broadband connectivity. The third big transformational moment you're enabling is blockchain. Blockchain is so much more than Bitcoin and some of those kinds of activities that we saw early on. It is the redefinition of trust. It is using a network to distribute trust and create a new economic model. And then the fourth major thing that we're all going to be facing is the challenge of cyber and the responsibility that you have to make sure that our networks are secure. You know, for as long as there have been networks, I don't care whether you're talking about animal paths, waterways, or roads, for as long as there have been networks, they have been attack vectors. And we shouldn't be surprised that the network of the 21st century becomes its own attack vector for those who want to come against us, both economically and in terms of the things that we believe. So those four things together, networks that orchestrate rather than just transport, AI, blockchain, and cyber vigilance, will be the factors that will define our future and take us into a transformational moment. Let me just touch for a second on what I said before was one of the things that I care the most about in terms of the use of broadband, and that's educating our most important asset, our youth. You know, when the railroad and the telegraph created the Industrial Revolution, society said we need workers for those plants and we need educated workers for those plants. And so they industrialized education, moving it from the one-room school marm to a factory-like setting, complete with bells that move you back and forth between class, and going through 12 steps and coming out a finished product at the end. That was good for the industrial era, but it's no longer sufficient for the information era. We have to move from the industrialization of education to the individualization of education. And that means that individual students need to have access to the world's knowledge need to have access to the information essential to their education. I had the privilege of visiting schools before and after broadband came to the classroom. And I remember one teacher one day telling me that the individualization that broadband allowed her to move from being the sage on the stage to the guide on the side. That she said, I used to have to stand up there and talk to everybody in the class, knowing that it was not a homogeneous class and hoping I was reaching everyone. Now, I move around the room and I watch them as they are individually interacting. And I have moved from hoping to helping those who need some kind of special assistance, all because of this idea of moving from industrialized to individualized education because of broadband. The E-rate reform that you all have been so important in is one of the things that I'm proudest of as I look back on my chairmanship. When we came in, approximately 30% of the schools in the United States had broadband connections. And of those, about half had Wi-Fi to the student's desk. And when we left, about 90% of all school campuses had Wi-Fi connectivity, high-speed Wi-Fi connectivity to every student's desk. And that's as a result of the efforts of the people in this room. And so I'm grateful to you for your leadership on this. It is significant that you are one of only 17 states who have taken advantage of our state match program that we put in the reform of the E-rate program to say the federal government will step up and put that last bit of money in if the state will step up and do its part. And you've done that in Arizona. And the Arizona students, the future of Arizona, are going to be better because of that leadership that you have shown. But I think about the challenges that you face in getting there and doing these kinds of things, and you illustrate those challenges, and you're dealing with them, illustrate one of the other takeaways in From Gutenberg to Google, and that is that the good old days are fake history. That we can't go back, and if we did, we would find that the good old days really weren't so good, that they were tough, that they were challenging, that technological change was creating anxiety and upheaval in both individuals and economic activity, but that the reason that America was able to deal with it was that individuals like you stepped up and said, we're going to do something with this. What made America great was that we didn't retreat from the challenges. We responded to the challenges, and that's what you're doing in Arizona. I know the challenges are not easy. I know financing is tough to build broadband where there's more tumbleweed than people, to deal with the realities and special needs of tribal nations. But you're taking them on, and you're taking them on collectively. You're stepping up to that challenge. And that's why I'm proud to be with you today. And why I wish you all the best as you go after your goals. You confront your challenges. And you make broadband the most powerful and pervasive platform in the history of the planet. I wish you the best for your conference, and thank you very much for inviting me.